Imagine standing in complete darkness on a quiet mountain trail. Suddenly, out of nowhere, an orb of light appears, floating, pulsating, moving unpredictably like it's alive. It changes colors, darts across the horizon, and then vanishes into thin air. No sound, no explanation, just you, the mountain, and a mystery that has baffled scientists, skeptics, and believers for over a century. Every so often, humanity encounters a mystery so strange, so unexplainable, that it lingers for decades. The Brown Mountain Lights are one of those enigmas. Moving like they have a mind of their own, these glowing orbs have been witnessed by thousands, recorded on camera, and studied by experts. And yet, no one knows what they are. What are the Brown Mountain Lights? Ghosts? UFOs? A natural phenomenon? Or is it something that we're not ready to understand? Today, we dive into one of the most fascinating unsolved mysteries in the world. And I'm certain, by the end of this video, you might just start to question what's really out there. The Brown Mountain Lights are alleged ghost lights near Brown Mountain in North Carolina, and no one knows how they came to be. The earliest written references of these unusual lights date back to the 1900s, and the first documented allusions to the lights appeared in 1912 following Jules Verne's 1906 novel Master of the World, in English in 1911. At first, people thought the source of the lights was the rapidly spreading electrification of the Linville Gorge area from the 1890s to the 1910s, and maybe what people were seeing were just light bulbs at a distance. But after a while, people could tell these lights weren't man-made. This wasn't someone's light bulb that was on in the distance. This was something else. For starters, the lights were not static. They moved freely like tennis balls. Heck, you could even predict the trajectory of a tennis ball better than you could predict these lights. The lights can appear above or below the horizon and can be in any color. They freely move around, leaving trails behind them and occasionally pulsate. At first, most people thought nothing of it, or didn't even know the lights existed. And you could see this when you read the books from that era. Prior to 1900, several travel logs about the region were published, including reports of odd happenings and ghost stories. However, none of these historical records mention unexplainable lights. That's to say, many villagers were ignorant of any odd lights until 1910. A man named Joseph Lovin stated that he first spotted the lights in 1897, but he paid no attention to them, and since no one else saw it, he chalked it up to him imagining things and forgot about it. Until his neighbor C.E. Gregory started raising public awareness of the lights in 1910. So people started noticing, and then Jules Verne's novel Master of the World was published in English in 1911, and that started the theory that something otherworldly could be at play here. Because a key story aspect in the novel is a mad scientist building an airship inside his secret lair in Table Rock, near Morganton, North Carolina, which causes odd lights to shine on the mountain's peak. So people started thinking it was somehow related. But during this time, critics of that time pointed out that Southern Railway had begun updating their locomotive headlamps to 600,000 candle power systems, resulting in a light output larger than that of certain lighthouses in use at the time. So what people were seeing was train lights. But that conclusion was not satisfying enough for some people. You know how you see or experience something you can't explain, and then someone tries to rationalize it, but you know what you saw, and what you saw was what you saw? That's how these people felt back then. The shape of the lights, the erratic movements, the colors, it can't just be a train moving. The Charlotte Daily Observer published an early story of the lights on September 24, 1913. It talked about these mysterious lights that were seen just above the horizon every night. people were getting scared. And here's the crazy part. This is not a story of what happened in the past or a government cover-up. This story, these lights, still exist as we speak. These are from two different people from two different times. The first one was taken in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and the second one was in November of 2000. To the critics, this is your proof. This is not just some story told by one person or a story from the past. This is still happening as we speak. In such, there is a subreddit that's just dedicated to people sharing their own experience with the lights, and everyone is just bedazzled about what these lights could mean or be. And no, these are not aurora lights, or remotely even close to it. These lights are entirely different from everything we know so far. Most times, they appear as orbs. These floating orbs would randomly appear, flying through the woods, sometimes above the horizon. Sometimes one would appear, illuminating the area around it in an orange color, as if it were a fire, but it couldn't be because they only lasted a few seconds to a minute before disappearing again. Others resembled flashlights or quad headlights. And sometimes they could be at least 25 distinct lights in various locations. And no matter how you try to rationalize it, you'd know deep down that these lights can't be headlights or simply lights from a nearby town. There was simply too much variation in shape, size, and color. This is important because even back then, one of the criticisms made was that the lights were human-made. In 1922, after the townspeople complained about the lights to the government, concerned for their safety, the government, to be precise, the United States Department of Interior Geological Survey, got people to investigate to truly find out if there was a cause for concern. This was where George Mansfield and other geologists came into play. As a USGS scientist, George R. Mansfield investigated the area, and from his investigation, he used a map and an Alidade telescope to prove that the lights that were being seen were trains, car headlights, and brush fires. This report ended widespread public concern. People were no longer worried, and the reports of strange lights died for that period. There is a link to the Mansfield's reports in the description below. But we are in 2025, and yet the lights still exist. So that reason has now been proven to be false. So what is it? If you follow this channel, by now you'd already suspect one theory. You've heard it before from multiple witnesses, from different timelines, and from different locations. The story might change, and the events might be different, but there's usually one thing that is constant in these stories, and that is the lights. There are always these orbs of lights that appear out of nowhere, move freely, act like they are intelligently controlled, and then disappear. As quickly as they come, they go, and then, after that, you most likely get abducted by aliens. During the 1950s, there was a UFO craze all over the United States, and probably the whole world. People were beginning to notice strange flying objects in the sky, preceded by these lights. In the Randleshon UFO case that I covered, top-ranking military men in their secured and secretive base noticed these lights before an encounter. Same with Betty and Barney Hill's story. So when people started seeing these lights again, and after the government's explanation was proven wrong, because now the train they said was the cause had stopped working, and yet the lights still existed, so it couldn't be trains or light from a nearby city, now people started to think, what if these lights were from another universe? And before anyone knew it, Brown Mountain became a popular destination for UFO hunters. So much so that the Argosy, a prominent American pulp magazine, named it one of the greatest spots to see extraterrestrial visitors. Then, one man came forward to say that he was abducted by these lights. This statement changed everything and made some people UFO believers. In 1965, Ralph Leal, a former furniture salesman, released The Brown Mountain Lights, a 28-page book that talked about his visit to Linville Gorge and his abduction by these lights. Unfortunately, I don't have his image, and for some weird reason, his book is hard to find, but I was lucky to get a summary of his story. According to the story, he got up close and personal with one of the lights. It appeared to him as an orb, hovering 10 feet away, and the glowing ball seemed to be examining him. He further described the orb as 10 to 12 feet across, nearly a perfect circle. It had a brown center that resembled a tumble insect with no head hanging on its back end. The insect was suspended in the middle of the bright ball. Then the orb spoke to him telepathically. The orb told him that he and his kind were from Venus and had come to Earth to save the human race from annihilation. Leal was then transported to their planet Venus, interacted with the aliens, even had some mommy and daddy sessions with their queen, and then returned to Earth 8 hours later to share his newfound knowledge. Now, how true all that is, I don't know, but Ralph clearly believes it. In 1982, a man called Tommy Hunter claimed to have touched one of the lights. He reached out to the ball of light over the edge of the Highway 181 overlook and got electrocuted. He walked away stunned but unscratched, and unlike Ralph's story, 6 eyewitnesses have actually confirmed his account. This meant the lights weren't just lights, something powered these orbs. Then, in 1990, a book by someone with the author name Commander X identified Brown Mountain as one of numerous other underground alien bases, with allegations of MJ-12, crashed saucers, animal mutilations, men in black, and claims of hidden moon bases. The crazy thing about the Brown Mountain Lights and why it is so intriguing is that no one can tell of their origin or what they are, which because of it has birthed so many theories, and depending on who you ask, you will get a different answer. For example, if you were to ask some native Indians about the brown lights, they would provide you with the oldest and most convincing story about the lights. In 1200 AD, the Cherokee and Catawba fought a conflict that left a large number of people, mostly men, dead. According to folklore, the lights are Cherokee maidens with lanterns hunting for their lovers in the night, even after generations. There is also the story of the terrible husband who murdered his wife and child and buried their bodies beneath rocks in the mountains. When anxious neighbors arrived to hunt for the missing mom and kid, the lights appeared and led them to a heap of rocks that proved to be their final resting place. According to some, the lights appear to remind evildoers that the truth will always be disclosed, while some people believe that the lights are fairies living in the Blue Ridge Mountains. But in all these different stories and theories, you can tell that we as humans yearn for someone, for something, to explain these lights to us. So, science stepped up with an explanation. But was it enough? A lot of critics over the century have proposed their own logical reasoning trying to explain what these lights are, but at the end of the day, all their theories were wrong. And I'm going to go through them one by one so that you can see just how strange these lights are, even for logical people. Some say the light visible over marshy areas is believed to be caused by the spontaneous combustion of marsh gas. But here's the thing, there are no marshy areas on or around Brown Mountain. Thus, the light seen at Brown Mountain cannot be attributed to this reason. Then, they said it could be caused by phosphorus. However, phosphorus is so easily oxidized that it does not occur in the free state. It is usually locked up in stable and relatively insoluble chemical compounds, and therefore cannot be a cause of the Brown Mountain light. Then they said no, it's not phosphorus, it's phosphorescence, aka foxfire. During decomposition, organic bodies like stumps and logs can become bright or phosphorescent through gradual oxidation and combustion. But here is the contradiction. Most witnesses saw the light from a considerable distance, and phosphorescence lights are too weak to be visible from a distance of many miles. It was also suggested that the lights may be caused by a chemical reaction between hydrogen sulfide and lead oxide. Sulfur springs are found on the west side of Brown Mountain, and lead oxide on the east side, so because of this, they thought this could be the reason. However, a consistent casual correlation between the two is exceedingly unlikely. I mean, once, sure. Heck, I could even agree it could be the cause if it only happened 10 times. But continuously for over 100 years? Not likely. Most of this critics' hypothesis was in the original report from George Mansfield. Every reason provided by logic, and there was a lot, was countered by also logic, which makes this case a fascinating one. And if this had stopped happening, like most cases, sure, we would say it's probably this reason or that reason, but the fact that it is still happening till now, and no one knows why, makes it quite riveting. So riveting that it caught the attention of this man, Dan Catan. Daniel Catan is a physics and astronomy professor at Appalachian State University, who also serves as the director of observatories. As a scientist, he is a trained skeptic who remains focused on logic, research, and evidence. He and other scientists and students organized a Brown Mountain Lights research group in 2012 to put an end to this fable and to investigate the physics of the lights. WCLEAR, which stands for Western Carolina Lights Experimental Advanced Researchers, uses stationary cameras in 2 sites. From Jonas Ridge, one has a view of Highway 181 and Brown Mountain. The other is south of the valley, looking up at Linville Gorge. Both cameras are located at private properties, where the owners have given permission to install the cameras and collect data via their broadband connection. These are infrared-sensitive, low-light cameras that capture image sequences throughout the night, from twilight to dawn. Once he got the recording, he would go through all the videos trying to find the lights, and then upload the same video without the lights to his YouTube channel for all to see. Catan worked to document the lights since February 2011, and it wasn't until July 2016, 5 years later, that he got a sighting. Catan was about to abandon the investigation when he discovered an abnormality while examining the footage from July. That's when he saw it. It was a grainy shot of the elusive lights, proving that this phenomenon is indeed real. But finding the lights was just part one of the problem. The second problem was determining what those lights were, and that was a roadblock for Catan. He was stumped with it.
My theory, and what got me back interested in it when I went through a cynical phase, was that they sound a lot like ball lightning, which is this has been reported for a century, these sports ball-sized globs of light.
Though he proposed a theory that it could be a hissing orb of lightning called ball lightning. The description of ball lightning varies greatly. It can move up and down, sideways, or in unanticipated trajectories, moving with or against the wind. Some reports describe it as passing through substantial amounts of wood or metal unaffected, while others describe it as destructive, melting, or burning those items. Its appearance has also been associated with electricity lines, elevations of 1,000 feet or above, thunderstorms, and sometimes even calm weather. Ball lightning has been described as transparent, translucent, and colorful, and they come in a variety of shapes such as spheres, ovals, teardrops, rods, and discs. So, in a way, it matches exactly what the Brown Mountain Lights do. This is live footage of a ball lightning. And remember the story of Tommy Hunter, how he touched the ball and got electrocuted, which a ball of lightning can do. So could this be the answer? Have the Brown Mountain Lights been finally explained? Well, the answer is we don't know. Since this phenomenon is very random and very difficult to study, Catan himself can't say with 100% confidence that the lights at Brown Mountain are ball lightning. What he can say definitively is this: we just don't know what causes the Brown Mountain Lights. I like that level of honesty, because truly no one knows. Now, I understand if someone sees a light in the sky and automatically calls it a UFO or a fairy, which is not. I understand them being wrong. That's just their brain trying to make sense of what they were seeing. That's why every timeline gave these lights its own mystery. From the lights being ghosts of warriors to being fairies and now UFOs, it shows that we are trying to make sense of it all. So I won't take most of what they say as important. In such, most reports of the lights were actually train lights, especially the reports from the 1910s that were specific and consistent. A witness noticed that around 9 p.m., he could see a set of lights pass by every night. He too was confused and thought these lights were strange, but after much investigation, it later turned out to be train lights. Or the fact that Ralph doesn't have proof of his supposed abduction and was somehow the only one who witnessed it. It's not very convincing. But when a couple of scientists who are trained in their respective scientific fields from geology to physics to astronomy also investigate and can't really provide answers too, then it means something. In such, the first thing that most critics thought was that these lights were ghost lights, just like the Marfa lights in Texas and the Min Min lights in Australia. In both cases, those lights were definitively identified as superior mirages of actual lights below the horizon. Atmospheric ghost lights are lights that appear in the atmosphere without an obvious cause, and they are often seen in humid climates. The geography in those locations is similar. Both are severely cleft with gullies that trap hot air during the day and then topped with cold night air, creating ideal conditions for reflecting light down from over the horizon. When the weather is within a certain range, the lights appear at both locations. And researchers have reliably and consistently correlated the presence of the lights with control lights set below the horizon. At first look, the Brown Mountain Lights appear to share many traits with the others, but upon closer study, the Brown Mountain Lights were different. It doesn't provide the condition for ghost lights. It's really a peculiar case because both critics and believers all failed. Every theory of it being a UFO or something otherworldly is wrong, because if it was, Brown Mountain would have more massive news coverage than it has now, and there would probably be like an Area 52 built on that site to cover it up. But because there's no such behavior and how open the place is to the public, we can say it is certainly not otherworldly. You can even book a trip to this place and see for yourself. It's gradually becoming a tourist attraction. And even the critics are wrong too, because every theory they throw out has been countered by logic and data that argues otherwise. So everyone in the world, or at least in North Carolina, is stuck asking, what the heck are these lights? The Brown Mountain Lights remind us that even in an age of satellites and supercomputers, there are mysteries we cannot explain. Are these lights a natural phenomenon, a glimpse into another dimension, or something even stranger? The answer may never come, but maybe, just maybe, one of you watching today will be the one to solve it. Until then, the lights will keep dancing on Brown Mountain, inviting us to wonder. Meanwhile, on another continent, Russia to be precise, they stumbled on something that was equally unexplainable and yet mesmerizing. They found a perfectly preserved body of a woman who died as far back as the 11th century. But her body remained like she died a week ago. It was a mystery that is still being talked about today in Russia.